Do you set your own standards or do you have to follow other people's standards? That's a good question. As I was thinking today that Tony Robbins always mentioned that you have to raise your standards. But you know what? For all the years I've been listening to Tony, I think I don't always understood what he meant. I was listening to a YouTuber, and his name is Benjamin. What's his name again? Benjamin Hardy. There you go. And he was talking about the fact that when you have standards, you're basically choosing your standards. So the whole idea was about the fact that you need to raise your standards. You have to look at them, assess them, and decide, do you want to choose new ones, yes or no? And then you can work on that one. Because guess what? If we don't get better with our standards, then you end up being at the same place at the end 5 months down the road, a year down the road, 3 years down the road, and you haven't evolved. You haven't done anything better. It is us the same place. So you need to assess your standards and move forward. Now, why would you say that? What do I know about standards? There you go. Well, I'm a teacher, and every day I guide students on how to assess their own achievements and see how they can raise their own standards. Now, often students, what they say is, well, I know what I know and it's good enough for me. Others, all they want to know is figure out, okay, knowing where I'm at right now, what can I do to go on to the next step? Because as a high school teacher, that's what you want your students to work with. You want them to be in grade 9 and then get ready for grade 10. Grade 10, be ready for grade 11. Grade 11 for 12. And then you want them to graduate to be able to go to the next step. So all the time we're assessing standards, their own standards, and we want to make them better. Now, as a teacher, there's a few ways you can think about that, and I think it works in business too. If you are working with people, sometimes people want to know what your standards are, and they follow your standards. And that's always beautiful. As a teacher, I outline what I need. This is what the project I want them to do, and they have some time to complete it, and then they need to present or give me a report or whatever is needed at the time. It's the same with work. If you are part of a company, they'll ask you, here's a project for you, you have this timeline, and let's see if you can get there. And indeed, the idea is the more experience you have, the more your standards are getting better. And that's why if you're an engineer, you go from junior engineer to senior engineer. If you're a geologist, from junior to senior geologist. If you are a lawyer, same thing happens. And if you're an electrician or a plumber, you go from apprenticeship to being able to do your work to a master electrician or a master plumber. Okay, so the idea here is, what is the next step? What can I do to go from here to the next step? Okay, so I think the first thing is to figure out what are your current standards and see what you can do to go to the next level. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if you think of your health, how well are you? Is your body healthy? Is your mind healthy? And are you doing everything you can to make sure that you are the best, top shape you can? Most of us, I will talk about me, I'm not quite there yet, and I realized in the last couple of days that the idea here is that I have some standards, but I need to choose the standard. It's not just me raising to do a bit more this or eating a bit of less that. It is to make better choices with respect to my standards, and that I can certainly do. With the people I spend time with, regarding if it could be at work, it could be with my friends, it could be with other people, am I contributing in my relationships as much as it can be? Think of the standards when you go with some friends. What do you do? What do you talk about? Is it possible to go to the next level? I think so. All you have to do is say, okay, is there a way for me to change the topic of conversations? You spend time with some people and all they find is all the negative part about this and that, and then people get involved in that discussion. And at the end of the day, it's not getting you anywhere. On the other hand, we all know that we can contribute to each other's life. So how about we talk to each other, find ways, find topics of interest to both the three of you or the group, and say, okay, what can we do to bring up the quality and the standards for the group of friends, from for your team, regardless if it's a team for work or a team for competition. If you play baseball, and the best thing is the more you play, the better you get. But is there some training you can do for team members so that you can help them get even better? And that I think would be priceless. Another aspect about taking care of your standards, I take this from Luxley, I think. It's a lady that does that writes a book on budgeting and taking care of um, your own financial situation. Gail, I think Gail Oxley. I'll have to double check. I'll put the link in. I'll put the name in the description if I have a chance. Now, her idea is the fact that you can become the CEO of your own life. So, what does that mean to be the CEO of your own life? Well, if you're the CEO of your own life, you have to do what's best for your life. So that means that if you are taking care of your life, you need to look at procurement. What do you need to be the best person you can be? You need food, lodging, people. You need projects to keep active. These are all amazing things. Next, you need to make sure that money comes in the house. So, what is the standard to which you bring the money in? Is it a job that you enjoy and you always enjoy going there? Or is it time for you to get more training so that you can bring up your standard with the work you can do? If you think the chief financial officer here, the same thing. You've got money coming in, but you also have to figure out how the money is going out. So that means that you can raise your standard on how much money you want to bring in your family or your household. But you can also set the standard on how the money goes out, what you spend on, where you invest money. These are all things you can do, and it is not about, okay, so if I say raise your standard about how you spend money, what does it mean? On the other hand, you can choose your standard saying, okay, this is where I want my money to go. So much goes for investment, so much goes for taking care of my house, and whatever is left over, what will I do? Will I use it to play? Will I use it to learn? Will I use it to help my family? These are all good questions, but then you're choosing to do that. You're not a victim of the current standard, something you've been doing and thinking for years. You're actually deciding on what you want to do and what's next. And as we continue with thinking about a business, if you are the chief operating officer, what do you spend your time with? Do you spend your time wisely? That means that when you have time for yourself, do you spend time to take care of your house? Do you learn? Do you make new connections, networking? Or do you use your time to go on social media, consume other people's content? In that case, bringing less to our society. This is a good question. And this is part of, not so it's part of raising your standard, but at the same time thinking that, okay, I can choose my standard. I can choose my standard to be able to, and you know what, I forget what the topic was. Hate when that happens. It does happen. So I'm going to go to the next step, and thank you very much for your patience on this one. So talking about standards, I was listening to Benjamin Hardy, and he was talking about the fact that standards can be considered as filters. And then that piqued my curiosity, but what did he mean by that? Well, when you have a high standard for fitness, for example, what you do to keep yourself fit, then it is also putting a filter of what you accept in your life and what you do not accept in your life. If you think of your standard of people you want to be spending time with, the stories being communicated, the contribution that is being done between different people, then it's the same thing. It is a filter. You're saying yes to a few people, you're saying no to a lot of people that are not following what you want. And that's quite interesting to see, because when you think of standard, as I mentioned earlier, often we're not quite sure, okay, we talk about standards, raising our standards, but what does that mean? Well, we need to make the choices of what's important for us, to put filters on what's the most important part in our lives. So that means that we choose what we eat, what we don't eat. It's not that we want to do less of something, we want to do better at what we're doing. We want to have better food, better sleep, better friends, better circle of acquaintances, better networking, so that every time you are spending time with people, then you're raising each other's energy. I'm not saying that you have to change the circle of friends or your job or the people you're working with, but try to see, is it possible that you can change the topic of conversations? Can you change some of the culture in your company or in your group to make it so that it works better? I remember when I was a teenager, we had a group of friends, and often we'll go to evenings on weekends, go dancing, go and see a movie. And that's what we did for years. And at some point, we realized that, okay, why don't we get together and then do activities? Then we go to lakes, we do canoeing, boating. So it was the same group of friends, but then we became much more active with what we were doing. And that was exciting. So here's the call to action for you. I want you to think about the standards you are doing right now. So what's important to you and how you feel about what you're doing. From there, I want you to think about, okay, these are my standards. Is it possible for me to do better? So that's important. Once you outline what you know you could do better, then I want you to say, okay, what are the choices that you can make to make better standards? Meaning, what are the filters you can add so that you can become more aware of what you're doing, but also raising your standard, also choosing your standards, and as I mentioned before, is putting in place the filters about what you're ready to accept in your life and what you're not ready to say yes to. That will free up sometimes, and guess what? You'll be able to do amazing things. On this, be amazing, and I'll see you in the next video.